During a trip I led to the Holy Land, a few hardy souls wanted to walk through Hezekiah's tunnel. 700 BC, Hezekiah was the king of Jerusalem, and he directed his diggers to do a serpentine tunnel through solid rock. Why? To make sure there was a secure source of water inside the city in case they were attacked by enemies, which in fact they were. Now, more than 2.5 millennia later, water still flows through Hezekiah's tunnel, and you can still walk through it. Well, maybe you can, not me. You see, I went through the tunnel, and it's pretty freaky in there. It's only one person wide. The water flows through, and sometimes it goes up to your waist. And often, in certain sections, the tunnel roof goes down below 5 feet, which means even a small person like myself has to bend over with the water up high for certain sections of it. It's completely underground. It's completely in the dark. First time I went through there in 1989, I got into the deep part of it and discovered an important discovery. I found out at that moment, I'm claustrophobic. I was starting to breathe fast. My heart was beating. I was sweating. I was nervous. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. I couldn't get out. I thought I'd never see the light of day again. A third of a mile underground. It was only really scary and frightening. And then suddenly had the bright idea of saying, hey, everybody, let's blow out our candles and see what total darkness is like. And we did. And I heard someone scream. And it was me. So you'd think 25 years later, I'd be great with it, cool with it, no problem, gotten over it. No. When people say, hey, Doug, would you lead us through Hezekiah's tunnel? I said in my mind, no way, not happening, nope, not going to do it, whatever, not going to do it. I remember the night before, I could not fall asleep. I was turning, tossing, sweating, dreaming of myself being trapped inside the tunnel. I decided I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to go. And then someone in the group said, oh, you're going. And that was my wife. And someone else said, don't be a baby. And that was my daughter. Who says peer pressure only works on teenagers? So I decided to go. Here we are, right before we go in. Notice my gritting teeth as I smile. Notice how my wife and daughter are on both sides of me so I don't run away. The trial of the tunnel taught me that much of life is filled with fear. Fear grips us. Fear controls us. Why don't you take that green paper if you've got one, and on there, answer this question. What fear grips you? Because I knew I could get through this. I intellectually had no problem with it. I was sure there was plenty of air in there. I knew hundreds of people had gone there, but it didn't matter. Fear is not rational. There was an irrational, raw thing that held me back. It was like a straitjacket. It was holding on to me and just wouldn't let go. What fear is gripping you? Let me give you some examples. Maybe you're worried. You know, when you see hurricanes devastating our nation, or you hear about wars around our globe, maybe you're fearful about gun violence in our cities and in our schools. Maybe you worry because you watch the stock market plunge and the economy struggling. Maybe you're afraid about your classes, your job, your spouse, your parents, your children. Maybe you fear over deadlines or debt, or depression, or divorce, or disease, or even death. It's irrational sometimes. Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's serious. Sometimes it's reasonable, sometimes it makes no sense. It's a straitjacket that keeps us from being free the way God intended us to be. And there are a lot of ways we deal with fear. For example, you can fight it. You can lash out against it. You can fall to it, surrender to it, let it rule over you. You can fly from it, say, I'm getting out of here, I'm running from this. You can drown it out, you can drug it away, but you know, even if you run away, it finds you. Why? Because it's in you. Which of those ways do you use? Maybe a combination of all three, but you know, there is another way to deal with fear. 700 years after Hezekiah was king in Jerusalem, there's another man in Jerusalem, and he has every reason to be afraid. His name is Yaakov bar Yosef. We've learned over the last 3 weeks that it's the Apostle James, the brother of Jesus, the author of the letter. Now, he is a leader of the church. He's the leader of the church in Jerusalem. After his brother Jesus appears to him, he becomes the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And the church grows from 120 to thousands, 5, 6, maybe even 8,000. Just that kind of success can cause a lot of anxiety and stress. But at the same time, it's a church that's persecuted and scattered. And James becomes the shepherd of the Jewish Christians all over the Roman Empire, spread all over the Roman Empire. And they're facing a lot of fear. They're being attacked, and they could fight it, they can fly from it, they can fall to it. But what James says is there's another way to face it, and that way is faith. This letter is going to show us how to have a faith that works. Practical guidance on how to live the life of faith, especially in the face of trials and temptations. James is going to show us how to do it. He's kind of like a coach. You know, have you ever had a coach in sports? They can be hard, they can be tough, they can be unyielding. But it's because he wants us to go through this faith-growing program that we can then come out on the other side stronger, spiritually able to face the challenges that come our way. And James starts off with some crazy talk in the beginning just to get our attention. The first thing he says is this. He says, we got to choose joy over fear. Choose joy over fear. Here's what he says. He says, and this is right at the beginning, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Now, what's he talking about here? How can pain cause us joy? I got to admit to you, friends, I've got warts on my hands. If you don't want to shake my hand, I'll understand, okay? And I have to go to the dermatologist. And I've been going to the dermatologist a couple different times this year. My dermatologist is a wonderful doctor. She's very caring. She's a Christian. She's a very nice person. But she has to torture me. Like she has to use this cold stuff that burns the warts off my hands. She actually apologizes while she's torturing me. So sweet, you know? And I have to tell you, I do not go in there skipping and singing for joy. And I don't come out that way either. I'm very grateful for what she does, but it causes me no joy. So what's James talking about here? He's saying we have to face it with joy, and he uses a key word. He says consider. Now, consider is not an emotional feeling. It's a mind thing. It's a perspective. It's an attitude towards joy. And James does not try to explain why you have the trials. He just assumes they're going to happen. He just knows they're going to come. So he's really not saying why. He's focusing on how. Many people ask me, why is this happening? Why is this occurring? Why is God doing this? Why? And you can spend a lot of time doing that. It's fine if you ask that question, no problem, but it often doesn't lead anywhere. Sometimes there isn't really an answer. What James does as a good coach is he says, let's look at how. How do you go through it? He says, go with joy. Now, joy, as you may remember, is not the same as happiness. Happiness would mean you're glad for the trial. He's not recommending that. He says joy means you know God can help you with the trial. James doesn't say pain is good. He never says that. But it can bring good when we face it with God's help, when we ask for God's strength and God's peace to fill us as we face the trial. Fear, of course, causes us to collapse under pressure, but joy takes pressure and it turns it into perseverance. Perseverance that trains us and strengthens us to face challenges. He says, perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature, complete, ready, equipped, not lacking anything. And by that, what he means is that facing trials with God's help strengthens you to handle challenges when they come up. My wife's a physical therapist. She tells me you've got to stretch and exercise the muscles if you want them to be stronger, if you want them to face other challenges that come your way. It's the same way with faith. I had a friend, his name was Jay. He was a member of my other church. I was asked to speak at his funeral. Now, Jay's company, he was the president of a company, they built testing machines. Testing machines are machines that test materials, products, to see if they will hold up under pressure. They, test them and stress them and put them through all these different things. Now, why do these machines do this? So that you and I know we can trust them when we need them. Some people collapse under pressure. Some people get, fall apart. Some people just feel overwhelmed and fall down. But I'm sure you've met people who in the middle of a stressful time seem to have a peace, seem to go forward with calm, seem to have a strength, seem to find a joy which is not from themselves but from heaven. My friend Jay, who built these testing machines, lived a life following Jesus Christ. He was a man of joy. No matter what things came into his life, he always seemed to bubble with that joy, even though he was tested a great deal during his life. Now, what James says is if we face these situations with joy, there's the potential that things will try to steal our joy, that we'll be led in detours and false dead ends. When I was in Hezekiah's tunnel, it's interesting, if you weren't so scared as I was, you'll see where the workers hit a dead end and stopped and then turned and went another way. There are going to be dead ends you're going to face that will try to steal your joy away. And here's the first one. James says, doubt. Doubt will try to steal your joy away. He says, if any of you lacks wisdom, pray. You should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave on the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. So first thing James says is when you face a trial, a challenge, pray. Ask God for wisdom. Here's a prayer. I put this on the green sheet as well if you want to hang on to it. It says this: God, thank you for being with me. Show me how to go through this trial, how you will use this trial to strengthen me, to deepen my faith, to help me grow. He says, ask God for wisdom to face it. Now, just because we ask God for wisdom doesn't mean we have all the answers. The thing is, remember, we're saying it's not why, but how. And so what's the answer to how? The answer to how is who. Who can help me? Who can I trust to help me lead through this time? Who can help me get through this? It doesn't mean you have all the answers, but you know the one who is the answer, Jesus. Jesus is the one who has gone through all these trials. He is the one who has overcome all these trials. He is the one who is victorious, and nothing can separate us from his love. It doesn't mean you're not going to have questions. Questions are okay. Having questions doesn't mean you doubt. Doubt means a lack of trust. You don't trust Jesus to guide you. And that happens in our lives. There's times we trust other things besides Jesus. And we trust Jesus again. Then we trust something else. And then we trust Jesus again. And then we trust something. And then we trust Jesus again. But the problem with this is it's very unstable. James says it's like being in a wind blown back and forth. It's being like a wave back and forth. It's like having one foot on a boat and one foot on the dock, and they're starting to go farther apart. There's an ancient proverb that says you shouldn't go two different paths. It says, the one who tries to walk two roads will split his pants. trust. And then you'll have joy. Here's the second thing that can steal our joy: distractions. We get distracted by life and we lose our joy. James says believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position. Rich should take pride in their humble position, their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant, its blossom falls, its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away even while they go about their business. Now, James is not against wealth and possessions. What he's against is taking pride in wealth and possessions, because they can distract us from God. Quite often, we identify with our stuff: our car, our house, our job, our things. But we do know those things don't last. They can be wiped away as quickly as a wildflower under a scorching sun. Things go quickly. Just watch the stock market. Just see what happened in Florida. It goes away quickly. It's not that these things are bad. They're good. They're just not God. People go away on mission trips, and when they come back, they're like, how can those people who have nothing have joy? And then we look at our neighbors who have everything, and they're miserable. Why? Because we think things give joy. What we need to do is not let them distract us from God, who gives real joy. And here's what James says: don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So in other words, don't let possessions distract you or steal your joy. God gives us gifts. Yes, they do come from God, and they're used to bless other people. Here's the last thing that can dead end destroy our joy: desire. This is actually the core problem underneath them all. When tempted, no one should say, God's tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. The real core underneath everything is the desire that life should go my way. And the reality is, it doesn't. But that causes me fear. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes you feel like you just want to make things work out the way you want. You just want to control your circumstances and situation. You just want to run the show. And here's the truth, friends, if you haven't figured this out already, it doesn't work out. You and I don't run the show, and things go badly. My fear comes from the fact that I desire it to do so, and it doesn't. And that's why I have to let go of my desires and trust God, that he's running the show. And his will be done. And he is leading me through this. And one day he'll come and take me home. James says, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. I'm going to end every one of these messages during this series with a little faith seeds, some faith seeds. I hope you'll plant these seeds this week. Here's some things to do during this week. When you come up against a trial, maybe you're in one right now, give it over to God in prayer. Start every day giving it over to God in prayer, whatever's troubling you. And if there's any kind of doubt or distraction or desire that's trying to get you to focus on that instead of God, turn away from it. Ask God to show you your next step. And I would encourage you to read these readings on this yellow page each day. I want to encourage you to get in a growth group, maybe one that's doing James or any of them. And I'm going to invite you to my Zoom meeting Monday night, 7 p.m. If you want to join us, right on the connection card, you want to be in Pastor Doug's group. Zoom was really nice to me. They said I could bring 100 of my closest friends to be part of it. So come on, y'all, and we'll learn about James or any other groups. But I encourage you to do something. Plant a seed of faith. Do you know the most amazing thing about Hezekiah's tunnel? This is really quite amazing, and they still don't understand how they did it. That tunnel is 1/3 of a mile long under solid rock. It's not a straight line, it's a serpentine path. And why? Because what we discovered is that the workers worked on two opposite ends and somehow met in the middle. We know this because there's an ancient description that was found inside the tunnel that describes the exciting moment at which the workers broke through the rock and water gushed from one end to the other. We still don't know. Scholars still can't explain how they did it. God is coming towards you in the tunnel of your darkness and fear. He's removing the obstacles. He's breaking through the walls. He's clearing a pathway so that the water of life can flow towards you. Trust Him. Look for Him. Count on Him. When I got to the end of Hezekiah's tunnel and I emerged out into the sunlight, it was like I was born again. It was like I'd gone through a resurrection. I can't tell you what great joy I felt. Count it all joy. You can count it all joy when you count on Him. Let's pray.